Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's roundtable discussion on Ziva Voices, Her Story in the Making. I'm super glad to have these five wonderful women here with me today from across the world. And today's topic is going to be, what does it mean to be a woman? And that is a question that has come across many of the conversations that I've been having when it comes to Ziva Voices. And there's really no one answer, but some people might try to perceive or show us that there is just actually one specific answer that we can give, and then one specific role description that fits all of us, and that maybe all women around the world should actually fit themselves into that role description. And I just wanted to have a few experts in what does it mean to be a woman. So we have five women joining us today, just speaking on that matter and on that topic. So I would like to just go through the round quickly and just have a short introduction, really starting maybe with Ade. I see you first on my screen today.
So my name is Adefunke Larigo, and I was born in Nigeria. I currently live in UK. I am a social worker. In terms of the work that I do, I operate within adoption and fostering space, and I promote diversity and inclusion in that space.
Thank you. Perfect. Then the next one is Tadenda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tatenda Zimondi. So I was born and bred in Harare in Zimbabwe, but I currently live in South Africa in Johannesburg. So that's where I've been for the past 5 years. So I work in professional services. So I am an accountant by profession. I work for a firm called Grant Thornton International. Currently, I'm supporting a lot of our member firms across the African region. And I work in diversity and inclusion as well for some of our firms. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Then Janira, you're next on my screen.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Janire. I'm originally from Spain, living in Washington, D.C., United States, working in Latin America. So I've been working in the private sector for over 15, almost 20 years in different institutions, the banking, academia, and also IDB, Inter-American Development Bank. And my last work was at the World Bank, the IFC World Bank. But a few years ago, I decided to follow my heart and continue with the work that I initiated 20 years ago, which is my current work. I'm the president and the founder of Met Community, which is a nonprofit that supports and provides mentoring, networking, training, and non-financial services for women entrepreneurs. We are very focused on women of color, which means in the United States, Hispanic women, Afro-American women, and women from Asia. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Then I have next Ivana.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ivana. I come from Serbia, Belgrade. Not sure if everyone knows where that is, because I actually come across that a lot. People usually go, where is that? So yeah, it's a small country in Eastern Europe, former Yugoslavia. I guess that's a bit easier for people to kind of find out where it actually is. And I currently work in as a people and culture manager in an American startup. Just recently switched from another role, working for a financial planning business in a very similar role, focused on education and HR. So working for a completely different completely different culture compared to this one. Also very, very interesting for me to, compare in terms of positions of women and all of that. So I do live in Serbia, not planning to relocate, but my biggest passion in life is traveling, and I've done quite a bit of it. I used to live for a little while in the US as well. That's how Kinga and I actually met and have remained friends for a really, really long time, which I'm really super proud of. So has been, since the topic is women, has been probably one of the biggest support for me in my life, in my motherhood and also my career, I would say. So yeah, I think that's in short a bit about me. And I do have 2 kids, a 13-year-old boy and an almost 2-year-old girl.
Nice. And then thank you. Thank you, Ivana, for joining us. Then I have Claudia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Claudia. I'm the founder of Be a Pitch. We are an impact consultancy focused on brands that want to have a positive impact in the world in terms of climate resilience and also social issues. We work a lot with business from Africa and Southeast Asia, and the goal is always like really build climate resilience through trade and actually prove that trade can be a force for good and actually build also conservation for commerce.
Thank you. And Claudia was also the one helping us to create our logo and colors for Ziva Voices. So I'm very thankful for that because that was a very long process. Great. Thanks so much. Like I want to actually just start right away and go into the conversation and just touch on a couple of topics and just see what the, experiences and perspectives are. And Claudia, I still have you right now, right in front of me. So I'll just start with you with the question of what aspects of being a woman do you really cherish? And what do you really like, as being a woman?
That can be such a long question, isn't it? There are like so many layers of it. And actually, I think that's what I love about being a woman is all these layers that we can develop and go through within ourselves. And for me, it's mostly about our capacity for compassion, which is also very related. We can say that it's anthropological, sociological, or evolutionary, our way that we are able to be givers and gift and being very in synchrony with the gift giving economy, for example. And also, and it's also related with this, the capacity that we have for subjectivity, to like really go and understand the others and really see like nothing in the world is black and white. And to really be able to understand and put ourselves in other points of views and like go through all these layers that we have as feminine bodies, all the pain, the resilience, the strength. Like there are so many layers that are about being a woman, so much to explore, so much to give, that I think it's incredible. It's really powerful just saying that I am a woman when you really feel what being a woman means and how it feels like.
Mm. You know what? Now, while you are actually also saying it and saying I am a woman and just bringing up the word, there's a question that I've been like just carrying with me, and I do speak a few other languages, and then most of you also speak multiple languages. And one thing that I found a little bit restricting almost in the English language is that the word man is in the word woman. And in the other languages that I speak, it's just not the case. So I'm just kind of curious, like to hear like the languages that you speak, specifically also with Ade and Tatenda. Like you two speak also, African languages. How is it in those two African languages?
So I speak Yoruba. Yoruba is a dialect from the south of Nigeria. And the people are also called Yoruba people. And in my language, in my mother tongue, the word woman is obirin. It doesn't have, and the word for man is okunrin. They sort of sound alike, but they're definitely spelled differently. So there's no kind of intercrossing. The word man does not come into the woman word. It's not like woman is made out of man kind of thing. No, it's separately, completely different words. So, but I do find it interesting that you bring it up about the word men being in women, because when I think of the word, for example, menopause, which is a challenge for women, the word men is in it, and I often thought, well, why is that? So
We actually have to. We should put Ivana on doing some research on that one because
that would be really interesting. Come to think of it, yeah, it's actually quite interesting. I didn't think about it in that direction. Interesting. Yeah. But yeah, in Serbian it's the same as Ade mentioned. Yeah, like completely two completely different words. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And Tatenda, you speak.
So I speak English now, I guess. Work, school was mostly English, but in Zimbabwe, our native language is Shona. Mm-hmm. So a man in Shona would be Murume, and a woman is Mukadzi. So the two really are not even related as well. So yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, and that's the same thing in Portuguese and Spanish, right? I mean, it's certainly the same in German and Polish. It's completely two, separate words. Sorry, I was just diverting a little bit because Claudia, you were just like pointing it out, when you say woman, and I'm like, yeah, but in all the other languages, we have these separate words. And I think, it's quite interesting also when, specifically nowadays, when we dig deeper into feminism and white feminism or American white feminism, also what that means. And, like, what does it mean to the rest of the world? Maybe, like switching a little bit from, like loving and really, what do we enjoy about being a woman? What do you enjoy about being a mother? And I think, like, except for Claudia and me, I think everyone is a mother on today's panel, right? So maybe
which doesn't make you less of a woman, of course.
No, I've
by no means.
It.
Yeah.
But I would love to just kind of like hear, like what are the aspects of motherhood? And like Ade has a very specific role also when it comes to children, because she has dedicated her life also to be working with children. So we will just start with you. Tell us a little bit more about like motherhood, and why did you choose to be a mother, and what aspects do you love of it?
Why did I choose to be a mother? I think for me, there's something about legacy. I lost my mom when I was very young. I was 8 years old when my mom passed. So I've always been very conscious of not having my mom there. And I wanted to, there is something around that, in that I believe it meant that for me, I wanted to be able to leave some kind of legacy, because I felt like my mom was taken away so quickly, and I was sort of scrambling around to sort of find this sort of mother role. So that made me want to, I suppose, leave something in this world through somebody else. So that's part of the reason why I became a mom. And I'm a mom of two. My oldest is 14 years old, teenager. So that's a very joyous period, as you can imagine. As much as I love him, sometimes we have a difference of opinion. And every day is a day of learning, I would say. That's one of the things I love about being a mom. Well, this is what I love about being a human being, to be honest, because you're learning every day. But I think for me as a mom, my children are teaching me every day. I feel like I'm learning every day how to be a better person, because there are times when I simply just don't want to do whatever it is. But you think, okay, we need to make sure that they've got everything they need, get to school in time, and if they're stuck with homework and all that jazz, you support them with it. And also sometimes they just ask you questions and you're like, wow, I never really thought of that question. And it makes you really think about what you're going to say. And so you give it an accurate information, and sometimes you just don't know. And sometimes I just say, I'll come back to you on that, because I don't have the answer right now. And I just love the way that they challenge me, the way that they make me look at my person and make me want to be a better person. And those are one of the aspects of being a mom that I love. And having a daughter, that just obviously takes the conversation to a different level, because I enjoy certain things that I do with my daughter, which my son doesn't enjoy, because he's obviously a different sex. So, he's a different gender. So yeah, it's really interesting watching my daughter. My husband would say to me, actually, I don't know why you're complaining about that, because she follows what you do. So that's where she gets that strong personality from. But I'm thinking, no, So, but anyway, those are just a few things that I enjoy about being a mom. Thank you. I can't hear you, Kinga.
Yeah, sorry, I'm usually Janine. I want to move from Ade to you, because I think that you, as an academic and researcher and someone that has been leading so many projects, I think you have waited a little bit longer in order to have also your first child, right? do you wanna share just, you know, shortly with us, like what made you decide to actually have a child, and then also, you know, take the step to actually really wait with it?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I wait for so long, but it was not waiting. It's basically that at certain point, at least in my case, I had to choose, and I was very focused on my professional career, and it was not easy when you travel a lot for work, and when you are working in this, for example, multilaterals in the World Bank, the IDB, that you have to work so hard and traveling a lot and studying and all of that is basically you don't see the moment for that. So I was over 40s when I had like I have 2 kids. So it was a challenge because I basically, there's the personal part that basically over 40s, there are so many things that happen and it's very complicated to have kids for so many reasons. And the professional part that all people told me, you're doing what you're doing because you don't have kids. Once you have kids, you will see that the thing's very different. You're traveling, you're doing all of these with your nonprofit, helping thousands of women all over the world because you don't have kids. Guess what? It's true that at least living in the United States and Spain is different, but living in the United States, you don't have insurance, you don't have like the paid benefits that you have in my own country in Spain. You don't have a lot of benefits like that. It's crazy because I mean, it's United States is not. But unfortunately, it's very difficult being a mom and being an entrepreneur. Very difficult. But at the same time, I have to tell you that I was working. So when the first doctor, they told me, look, you have to stop working because you're over 40s, you have so many complications, and your pregnancy, you cannot work, you cannot travel, and you have to step down. And I changed my doctor. I said, this doctor is not for me, because sometimes your brain and being focused, being committed, being excited, and being passionate about what you do is very powerful. It's very powerful. So I changed my doctor. I found one that said, okay, you're going to be traveling, providing training and all of this to Latin America and all these places with all this. So you have to use these socks, do this and this, that, and you have to do this. I was traveling until month 8. I had no problems with the delivery. And I took 0 days for the maternity leave, just the day in the C-section and 2 days later. So obviously I was not working the same. It was not the same. It's a big change. But when I'm going to say it's not easy and it's not as difficult as people say. And you can continue being a mom and a professional and being passionate about what you do. Of course, it's not easy, of course, but nothing is easy if you want to do certain things that you want to. So that's my story. I'm a old mom with 2 small babies. I work super hard. I don't sleep so much now because of work, now because of a mix of things. But I mean, I'm very proud of, and also my family, but we cannot do it alone. Obviously, you need support. That is very important too. You don't have someone that is supporting you. The family, the friends, and the support is not possible, but it's not impossible. So it's not impossible doing, and I think that is very needed for our mental health and for our lives to become role models. And that means doing what are you passionate about, what you want to do, and at least doing your best to do and to follow your heart.
I love that. I really love that. Thanks so much for sharing that. Also, specifically, you know, you sharing and saying, you know what, you meet one doctor and you don't hear what you want, you just change your doctor. You know, like in the work that I do, that's just so important because I feel like specifically doctors are sometimes just not aware of what kind of messages they're sending us subconsciously, and subconsciously we can just really make things, you know, happen in a different way if we put our minds to it. So thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, to me, a very interesting story, and thank you for sharing this. And I think I would like to kind of tag along and just add to the point relating to the support that you actually get from your family and especially your partner. I think that's one of the crucial things in having it all and doing it all. Okay, so being a mom and doing the career thing, right? So if you don't have the support, the appropriate support from your partner, you absolutely cannot do it. So there has to be equality when it comes to that. So both me and my husband, we work, we have careers, okay? But whenever I needed the support to do things that I want to do and maybe not be there for my kids when I needed to do something else, he was there. I think that's really, really important. And then the other question that you asked, Kinga, I think that's actually a really good question. I think it got me thinking about like, why do people decide to have kids? Because I think when I was younger, I also struggled with that question. I think everyone does. But I think you get an answer to this question once you meet the right person to have the kids with. And I think things have changed a bit in this regard. I hear people saying, okay, what should I do to become a mom? And they don't have a partner for it. And they think about like different ways they can become a mom just to become a mom. I don't know if that's like besides the topic, but I had an interesting conversation with a woman that is very, very successful in her career, like hitting her 40s. And now she's like, I want to have kids, but I don't have a partner. It's interesting. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, kind of like the aspect also that the modern societies are forgetting, right? The community and partnership that we need in order to make things happen. And I think that kids are just like any other project, a project that if we want to be able to be successful with it, we need to have the right people around us. Tatenda, I do have in that regard, a little bit also of a question for you, because I think that you are very successful in the area that you're working in, and you have, made your way into a male-driven and dominated, work environment, but at the same time, you have, I feel like, kept the core of yourself and being true to yourself. And you do have, and correct me, I don't remember anymore I think you have 2 kids as well.
Yeah,
right?
two boys.
Yes, 2 boys. Yeah. So with that, like what I admire so much about you, and like every time when I see something, and I follow, a little bit of your journey, it's like the leadership in it. I mean, being also in South Africa, being, from Southern Africa, right? You are working sometimes against different aspects in the world than, someone that is right now in Europe or so. And you have just built yourself as this incredible, strong woman. So how do you showcase your leadership actually to your boys?
Oh, wow. I think my boys, first of all, have brought that meaning to my life. Generally, when I look at why I wake up in the morning, it's for them. And, like Yanira said, I mean, like for me, having my kids was not easy. Fertility is not always easy for everyone. So once you hold your kids in your hands, you almost like, yes, this is what I wanted. This is what life is. But also part of how I grew up was my dad left my mom, and my mom struggled to raise us. So I always knew back then when I was growing up, I wanted to come to a point where by the time I got married, I was financially independent, but also I just had this dream to be, in a leadership position within an international organization. It was always some of those aspects that drove me, but primarily because of how I grew up. And you sort of see those struggles and you're like, but no, I don't want my kids to see this when I'm older. So I think part of that drive is how I've ended up here. And once I always feel like maybe I'm right there, but I still find myself pushing for more and for more challenges. I mean, like throughout my life, I probably have sat in very difficult boardrooms, have difficult challenges with different companies across, Southern Africa. And now, I work with difficult CEOs across Africa. But I always come back and remind myself to say, nothing is as difficult as it has been raising my 2 boys. When I have to come back home and I have to see that report card that my son's struggling with something, that's always something very hard to deal with. And I've always said to my husband, you know what? I can handle any boardroom situation. I cannot handle going to sit around my kids' teachers telling me how much my kid is struggling on a particular aspect. So I think that almost always brings me back to say I need to be present for my kids 100%, even though I have a demanding job. But I still want to instill some of those values in them, in who they will become in future. And I guess coming from this society where I'm in, where it's primarily still very male dominated, and like you said, deciding to work in a very male dominated environment and finding your way, I'm almost always very conscious of saying to my boys, there's space for everyone, because in my career, there's always been times where you feel there's no space for you as a woman. And I don't want my kids to grow up with that mindset of they just think that the world is for men, but then they need to recognize that the world is for everyone. And even if they're in the workplace, they need to be able to create spaces for everyone. So that's sort of the message I bring my kids. I mean, like, it's difficult with an 8-year-old, but I think they sort of ground me and bring me back to reality after my difficult days in the boardroom, I could say.
I love that. No, I really, you know what? I actually really, that's the first time that I've heard this perspective also, just kind of like, hey, like every boardroom is actually easy. I can deal with any CEO. What I can't deal with, seeing my kids struggle. And I mean, that also just kind of like shows, how you kept still your, I would say, the kindness and the delicateness that often comes with being a woman, the ability to feel into specific situations. So I really love that. Thanks so much for sharing. Claudia, I will come to you. Just the one friend in this whole thing without children. And I have actually never asked you if you want children. I'm not going to ask you this right now, but I will later on text you about that. Because I know that this conversation can be sometimes loaded still for many women, and from my perspective, I can just say, like, I knew it from very early on that I don't want children. I was this 9-year-old girl walking around and like, I don't want kids, so there wasn't something that just evolved. And I think that Ivana saw me now for almost 20 years. I mean, we've known each other for really almost 20 years. She has been trying to always like see if something has changed,
Yeah. I kind of thought that you would change your mind, but then at some point I realized that's not what you want to do, and I'm completely fine with that, and everyone else should be.
Yeah.
Whatever makes you happy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be nice sometimes to have more kids around, in the US, the society is just a little bit different. I think in Europe, you do get the kids from your friends a little bit more often, but anyways, Claudia, my dear, you are in Portugal, you're an entrepreneur, and you started your own company pretty early, pretty at a young age. I believe you were still, I don't know if did you turn 30 yet?
I'm turning 40 this year. I was 25 when I started Be Pitch.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So what obstacles did you find along the journey, specifically being a woman that started her own company?
That's a lot of them, and some of them you just perceive them after you pass them, I would say. I have to be honest, when I started Be a Pitch, I think I actually got some leverage because I was a woman. So I'd like, she's this young woman, just the girl just trying out. And then I think I got a lot of clients, even male clients, because of that. Oh, it's cute, it's nice, let's give her like this part of the business. And as you grow, you really at least need to step up your game and get other type of clients. You start realizing that the more you want to go in the ladder, the harder it starts to have like a good perception from men in business, or to being able to have them taking you seriously. And it's very interesting because I also that a lot of this journey also comes from within myself or within ourselves as women. I feel like I'm much more relaxed when I'm talking with a woman, for example, as having a woman as a client, that I can be much more open with her, that we can talk about different emotional stuff within the business. When I'm talking with a man, especially if it's this white 50 years old man, you need always to, okay, I need to go to this meeting and I need to look very tough and that I have all my numbers and all my shit together. Like there is all this math that we need to have. Yeah. So it's very interesting to go through all these journeys. And I know I have a lot of friends that also have business and say, oh, I don't want to work with men. Now I have a woman's business and I will only work with female founders. I never wanted that because, I mean, if you want to create a better world, we all need to work together. And I also see like part of my mission is also to be on these boardrooms or in this business with very male-dominated, and actually kind of bringing them to like more to the center of the spectrum between a female-oriented business in terms of values or a male-oriented business in terms of values. And yeah, it's a process that I feel as a woman you have to be continuously leading with as you grow as a person and also as a business leader. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Claudia.
And just that, and I'm remembering another conversation I had with a friend, that it's also an internal conflict that I think we have as women. She's like, she was 45, I think, like, I don't know if I want to keep up my business, because I need to keep up my business. I need to be such this tough person that I feel then I'm really damaging myself in terms of values. And I think this is something that we also need to be very conscious when we are a woman in business. We say, okay, just because you are a woman, you don't really need to adapt to this system, a very strict system. You actually need to make the system adapt to yourself. And I think that's our biggest journey as women in business, is like change the system little by little in that sense.
Yeah, and I hear you on that, because that's really also aligned with what I believe and why I started my own business very early on, with the idea that if we create our own businesses, we can start creating our own systems and do our own things instead of having to mold ourselves into something that just doesn't fit us, right? And I think that is often, the motivational factor for a lot of women. But what you're also saying, like with involving in there are just X amount of women in business. So at some point you're going to also reach, the bucket of how many clients you have from there, right? So you are going to have to diversify. And then it's the question, how are you going to do that? I love that. But Claudia, besides you being an entrepreneur, and I think that that's also a question for everyone. And I would like to just, throw this maybe as one of the closing questions into the round, because I know that everyone is going to want to say something on this, but you've worked with women also across the world. And I know that you worked with women in Kenya, and I know that you worked with indigenous women in Latin America. The obstacles that you see maybe for these women, or the barriers, or however we want to call this, like what are maybe the two most significant situations that you have encountered that made you even sad?
When you're talking about patriarchal societies, which we have a patriarchal society, but even more patriarchal societies, it's really hard, because there are things, you need to question. Being a woman is completely different in the sense that you have so many other social issues that you need to start taking care about before even talking about women in business. Like, for example, genital mutilation, a woman that doesn't want to have kids, etc. When working with indigenous women, then I met amazing indigenous women. I'm always so in awe when I'm in these movements, because they are so strong, so much resilience, so powerful. It's incredible. But then we also need to figure out that most of the indigenous communities, they are very close indigenous communities. Therefore, your community is not the world, but it's like the community that you were born within, that it's in that forest, for example. Therefore, like the social constructs are even stronger in terms of then what is limiting you, or what person you want to be, or what person you can be, and what you think that it's possible in terms of reality. And yeah, that it's a challenge in the sense that it's really, I feel like when I'm working with other communities, it's also opening up the minds. As they open my mind, like have this ecosystem of symbiosis where I open their mind and they open my mind in terms of possibilities and how can we build and construct the world.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I love also, like you pointing out, like the different ecosystems, and kind of like what is important within that ecosystem, right? What is also important in order to build that community. Yeah. Ivana, you being in Serbia, a country that is indeed not known by everyone, and a country that just
But yeah, it is still a typical, I would say, Eastern European country with all its issues and like the past and all of that, like former communist country and all of that. Yeah.
So like when you keep that in mind, and you see now you have a younger sister, and just kind of like also embracing and building careers and building lives for yourself, but also in your wider circle, like what is it that women in Serbia are currently trying to change?
That's actually a very interesting question. And I think that I would tie this to the other question on your list that I read, which is, why is it okay for women to aspire to be more than a mother? because I'm looking at the question, I'm like, why are we even asking this? Okay, because to me, that's not even a question. It shouldn't be a question. Why? I was born into a family where I had a working mom. Both of my parents had a career, okay? Mechanical engineer, a lawyer, okay? So it was a completely natural thing for me to think about what I'm going to study and what I'm going to become, right? And what career I'm going to build. It was like that, not only for my family, it was like that for everyone. Why? We didn't have the privilege of only one person in the family working and being the breadwinner. Okay. So everyone had to work. And I actually kind of like that because I think that sets a really, really good example for everyone. It was a bit easier back then because like the working hours were shorter. So it was much easier to raise your family, you know, to raise kids, to build a career and all of that. But to me, that has always been completely normal to be a working mom. So I have never even questioned that. And I'm really happy to say that even nowadays, for a lot of women in Serbia, that's still no longer a question. Even though there are men that are making money and can support their families. So even when there is no need for the woman to work, we still do. Okay. And I must say that I was completely baffled, like in the US, and I'm sure you went through the same experience, to see how many educated women there are that are stay-at-home moms. I didn't get it. And sometimes I would just, you know, like go around and you know, I would talk to people and they would tell me they graduated from Harvard or wherever, it doesn't matter, and that they're actually not working. I'm not like, I know, like I've gotten to know the American society pretty well, but it's just, it was, to me, it was completely baffling to actually learn that. And I think looking at those two situations, I would rather be in the other one, right? Where I don't need this privilege not to be working because I do want to work. Okay. I'm not really sure if I'm getting my point across, but that's something that is really, really important, at least in my country. And like all the friends that I have and all the women that are in my environment, they all work. So yeah, you do have kids. It's very tough for a while. You don't give up on your career.
I mean, it's an interesting point, you know, because it's something that I always tried with a lot of sensitivity, specifically, you know, when in the US, to discuss, to kind of like showcase, you know, hey, the equality that existed in former Eastern European countries under socialism, you know, was embedded already in the law. And like no one wants to talk about that, right? It was written in the law that the woman has equal access to everything and should be equally, you know, supported. And I mean, like the law defines it even more so, more precise, even like when you read some of these laws. It's really interesting. So it's really important to also point that out, that it's just really also not a question, you know. And I think that we do need to pick up that conversation at a later stage to order go and dive a little bit deeper into the Eastern European cultures, because a lot of people have no clue. Like, you know, when I was in South Africa and traveled across Africa, you know, I was like, there are so many similarities because it is more a communal culture. But with that also comes some similarities to maybe some of the struggles, because then the patriarchal systems don't become always so visible, right? The way they are visible in the US or in some of the, you know, Western European countries. Tatenda, you are in South Africa right now, and did you start your career in South Africa, or did you start your career
in Zimbabwe?
You started it
in Zimbabwe.
Yeah. And when you are, I mean, I've lived in South Africa for a while, you know, my heart is still there. I don't know. I love that part of the world very much. And I've seen and met incredible women. I mean, powerful women, you know, women really, you know, marching, and women not just from South Africa, but, you know, from across southern parts of Africa, just also that migrated to South Africa in order to start better lives or have better possibilities, right? With you, and maybe, you know, trying to keep it short, but like, what are the struggles that women in South Africa are having, you know, and maybe you can if so, if you're perceiving it as such, are there also racial inequalities that you're still seeing between women in Southern Africa? And how, yes, let me finish the question here.
Yeah, and I guess being here 5 years, and like you rightly say, I think South African women, certainly in the corporate space, very confident, and I think has gone a really long way to actually boost my confidence as well personally. But you still find, I think women generally, we do struggle with, I guess, confidence, just a lack of self-belief in general. And I think this is really grounded in the society that we're in, where whilst we're struggling to believe in ourselves, we have men, or we have corporates, or we have, that are also struggling to believe whether we can actually do it. So then you almost are surrounded with this sort of sense of, do people believe that Tatinda can actually do this? Can she sit in this leadership position and do what needs to be done because of the society that we're in? So the struggle is almost around trying to build people's confidence, which has been part of the work that I try to do in my space, to say, you sit around a table with amazing upcoming women that have so much value, that have so much capability, are so competent, but then they don't see themselves that way. So I think a part of what I say to myself is what I need to do. I think we've had this conversation, Kinga, is about telling their stories. I'm very big on telling their stories, how they've come to where they are today. And once you hear me speak, I'll always speak about where I come from, because I think a lot of people come from that space, but then because they feel like they come from that space, they're not confident enough to sit there. Can I really do that? Can I really be in that space? So, I mean, that's really been a big part of me. And I guess being in South Africa, race was never a part of me growing up in my professional career. And I always say this because people always ask me sometimes to talk about racial inequality, but because I grew up in Zim, my career started in Zimbabwe. I worked in Nairobi in Kenya for 2 years, primarily corporate is Black in those societies. And then when I came to South Africa, I had these questions then posed at me, and you're almost like, should I be speaking about this? Because it's almost like you do not want to offend people that have grown up in apartheid, because I didn't grow up in a society where race was such a big issue. So I stay away from race conversations because part of me feels like I haven't had that experience enough for me to talk about it because of where I'm coming from. But because I've been in the society now, I'm like, oh, okay. So it's possible that I may have been naive back then, or, it's almost like it starts to click, and a lot has happened in the world in the last few years that you almost are, or we all opening up our eyes. And I've said to a couple of my workmates, like, don't have the biases because I'm Black. I can talk about it intelligently, but because of where I'm coming from, I haven't seen those situations. But now I do. Now I'm conscious of it. And you can see it every now and again, but you try and find a way to, I think I'm in that space where I've said to myself, I need to learn, and I need to unlearn the things that I thought about racism, and especially coming from me being in this post-apartheid society now for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love talking to you. It's just such a, like you do highlight the other perspectives just so well, and you just bring it so well to the point. So we have just a few minutes left, but I do want to hear Ade and Janira just, on that question as well. So Ade, like I would love for you, just to highlight maybe a little bit of a different aspect of the same question, more so maybe from the perspective of being really an immigrant. I mean, you were young, you were 12 when you immigrated to the UK, you have still your culture at home, and then you live a different culture outside, you have integrated also in your personal home 2 different cultures, and are living kind of like in between, which I think that's one of the things why you resonate so much with me, because that's, part of my story growing up, with different cultures. So if you could, maybe enlighten us a little bit on that aspect.
Okay. Thank you, Kinga. So I moved to UK when I was 15. And it was a culture shock for me because, like you, Tatenda, when I was living in Nigeria, being a woman of color wasn't really a thing that I necessarily thought about because everybody else around me was pretty much the same skin color. So you just kind of got on with it. Every now and again, I would see some of my neighbors who were European people, but obviously they were in the minority. But I didn't really engage with them per se. You would say hello, but that was about it. But when I moved to UK, it was very apparent very, very quickly, even amongst people who had the same skin color. Some of them felt the need to point out that I'm from a different place. So that was interesting because in my head, because I came from a place where everybody looked the same, I didn't really need to think about this person is from this place or they're from that place. It would you kind of to me, I felt like we all just got on. But obviously, bear in mind that I was young, so I might have had a child's lens on the outlook of how things really were. Looking back on it now, of course, where if you don't look the same just because you have a skin color, you don't. But I do see the challenges as I've grown up, having to adapt to the British life, I suppose. And I think for me, one of the things that I struggled with is that my stepmom would say to me, remember, you're not from here. So, you need to present yourself in a certain way. And at the time, I didn't really know which way to be, who to be, because I felt like when I would go out, I had to wear a certain lens and behave in a certain way. And then when I came home, I had to be this other person. And I really struggled with that for quite a while. And at the time, I don't think I realized how much of a struggle it was. I just kind of was figuring it out and trying to make sense of it. And of course, I was a teenager. So you also have other psychological things going on for you anyway. So then trying to figure out, right, who am I going to be? Who am I supposed to be? But over time, I remember at some point I decided, you know what? I'm going to just pick all the things that I like about all these cultures, and I'm going to just do my own thing. And that's it. And whoever doesn't like it, then it's just tough. That's just too bad. And I think once I made that decision, I felt more confident to start to maybe grow into my own skin. But being a woman, there is still some challenges that I face, especially in the space where I work, because I am trying to. Somebody made a point earlier, I can't remember who it was, who said, you want to change something, you want to change the world. I feel like in the adoption and fostering space, I am trying to make it change, because I find that in that space, that particularly in the leadership, you don't have very many women. When you go on the front line, there's lots of women, but as you go up in the strategic level, there's way less women. And also you find yourself dealing with middle class, and I really want to make a change in that. So I've had to step away from my frontline role as a social worker and created an organization so that I could come in almost from the side, so that I'm able to have conversations with the leaders, because trying to go from the bottom, nobody's going to hear me. So I've had to carve out for myself another space so that I'm able to meet the leaders of the agencies on a leadership level. So I can go in as a CEO. I'm taken more seriously when I come as that, rather than as a social worker. Well, nobody's really that interested. So I don't know if I'm answering the question here, but those are just some of the things that I find difficult, in that even now I am making sense of the entrepreneurial world, but there's still lots of challenges. And I'm very aware that there are many women who want to do things. They want to change the world, make things better for people in general, not necessarily just women, but maybe lack of funding is a bit of a difficulty for them. So they're not able to perhaps start the venture that they want to start. They don't know where to look for it. But of course, the thing is that you have to start the thing you want to change, and then you try to find a way. Whereas I think many people, Tatenda, you make a point about women lacking confidence. I totally agree. I think sometimes because we're so bogged down with, oh yeah, but nobody will take me seriously, we don't step out and do the thing because we're waiting to feel confident. But actually the confidence comes from doing the thing that you're most fearful of. And I'm preaching to myself as I'm saying this, because Kinka, you would know, sometimes you say to me, come do this, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. But it's you grow into the space that you step into, but the growth doesn't come from you sitting there and being worried and not doing anything change. You got to make a change. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
Thanks so much. I will just quickly summarize it, because I think in the essence of what you're saying and what some of the other ones said already is it's all really about gaining confidence, right? So self-belief and self-trust and the sensation of you can actually do it. But I think what's really interesting in particular in your story is that what you've been doing is just really carving your own role and your own meaning of what it means to be a woman and how you want to be a woman, right? Instead of fitting into, oh, I need to be outside this person and inside I need to be that person, depending on where you are. And I think that that's something that's really important, giving each other the right to be just simply, right? Like however, and what feels most comfortable with you or for you, to be that person. And with that, Janira, I just in a minute, maybe, because you have, really significant experience, working with women also worldwide. You have the experience also of traveling around the world and just seeing, the obstacles. If there's one thing maybe globally, what is the one thing that needs to change globally for women in order for women to be able to step up into the next, I guess, space, or into the ability to be more impactful than we are right now?
So when I was listening, and I thank you so much to all of you, because when I was listening to all the stories, I was in one way or the other connected to all of you. And when I was listening to Ivana, for example, that she was saying like that the parents, they could not afford not working, no? And when I was listening to that, I was at the same time, I was also thinking that when you travel and you live in another country, as you, or some of you share, a lot of things in your mindset also change. For example, here in the United States, some people, they cannot work in the things that they want to work because they cannot afford that. Because, for example, the social system is not like in Europe, that you can send your kids as a mom to places that they are not very expensive, or you can find a nanny or someone to take care of the kids easily and affordable. So sometimes you cannot do that. You have to spend, you cannot work because you cannot afford taking your kids to the school. And you have to stay at home and say, I stay home because you cannot pay the school, or you cannot pay the nanny, or you cannot pay anyone. So what is interesting is also having this global approach, but also knowing the local, where are you living and where you want to live. And it's when you realize that we need to think bigger. As women, in everything, we need to think bigger, because we're always, as a woman, as a mom, as an entrepreneur, we always limited to our own environment. And we always think, I'm going to sell to my friends, to my family, and to this. Why we don't think I'm going to sell abroad to people in a different country, right? So I think we need to be more ambitious. And for that, responding to your question, Kinga, is that we need to work, since we are small, in our level of self-confidence. Because, I mean, every time we see women in Africa, we think that women, they are not, are not as powerful as they are. But we need to learn a lot about women in Africa. Women in Africa, women entrepreneurs, the level of self-confidence is super high compared to women in Latin America. People, they don't know that. And that's the second thing, the second recommendation that I say. The first one is the self-confidence and think bigger for all our girls, for our women. But the second is also being sure that you can be humble and learn from everything and everyone. Because if we have these stereotypes that women in Africa, women in Latin America, women on that, we are not going to learn, and we're going to miss a lot of great things from learning and from connecting from other people. And that inclusive approach and inclusive mindset is breaking the stereotypes. I think the second thing that we can start, all of us, doing by connecting with women like we are doing today, thanks to Kinga. So these are my two recommendations. Thank you so much.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for summarizing and putting it, together in such a way. And it's really interesting because specifically the second recommendation, that you have, it aligns very much like with one of my biggest dreams and one of the goals that we have for Ziva Voices, creating a global conference where we actually team up women into dual partnerships where it's not just the one side that is teaching the other side, but you have both sides teaching each other the other part of the aspect, like of the aspect of doing business or just being a human being. Because what I really learned specifically when traveling through Africa, but also, through Asia, I have to say, is that women have this incredible ability to stay positive no matter how things look like. But because of that positivity, they are more powerful because they don't close off, their options. And that is something, it's just so important for us to see the wider picture, as you also said, like don't sell just to the direct people that you have, but having, the ability to see yourself build a grand and impactful future. And you're saying also in the comments, resilience is power. Exactly, right? And how do we build resilience? We build resilience, A, through community, but B, also through keeping a growth or positive mindset, as now PR and marketing people love these two terms, but being able to just like see, the bright side of the story, no matter how hard the situation is right now. I would like to, really thank you, all of you, for, giving me this time today and giving Ziva Voices your time today and just like enlightening us on a few questions. And I think that the questions aren't fully answered yet. I think that we're going to have to dig deeper into it at some point, hopefully on a, wider stage as well. But I think that the most important aspects that we were able to highlight is really the giving each other the support of exploring of actually what our potential is and who we want to be, and not putting any kind of barriers around it, but also, of course, breaking down specific social constructs that so many people and countries want us to fall into. So with that, thanks again. I know that I will be speaking to many of you very soon, and I hope that all of you can connect also outside of this forum. And I just welcome you to share the link to the video once it's out. We're going to just do a few edits on it. And I hope also to the listeners that you're all going to come back very soon. And yeah, let's see.